Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 454.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we're going to have a great conversation. And by great, I mean the kind of conversation that I know you need to have in order to continue to build your business, make it better, make it bigger, make it better, do the things that you ultimately want to do. You're like, what are you talking about, Jay? Well, here's the thing. Whether you are just now starting, I know maybe you're trying to get to, 5 figures of revenue on a monthly basis, or maybe you're already starting and you want 6, or maybe you're like, Jay, I am done with this 7-figure stuff. I'm ready to go to 8 and beyond, and I need some help. Good. I think I have the solution for you, because one of the things that I was taught a very long time ago was the following phrase: if you build the people will build the business. And no matter the size of the endeavor that you are looking to do, we have to invest in our people. We have to build the team that's going to help make the dream happen. And I have with me today an individual who does just that. He helps you build the team to make the dream. And most importantly, we all get to have ice cream later. No, I'm just kidding. But you get my point. What it comes down to is that we need help sometimes. And sometimes that help is found within, and we've got to find a way to make our organization great. And that's kind of what he does. I have with me today none other than Kelly Riggs. He's an author, speaker, and business performance coach for executives and companies throughout the U.S. and Canada. Now, here's some things that I want to say. One of the most important skill sets, as you know, is sales. And he's been 2-time Salesperson of the Year. That means he knows how to do it. And more importantly, because he's helped some of the largest companies that you may have actually never heard of, which doesn't matter. Here's the point. He can help you and I do it too. But he's also helped tons of companies that you heard of too. But that's neither here nor there, because right now he's going to help you and me become bigger, better, badder entrepreneurs. So do me a favor. Help me welcome Kelly Riggs. Kelly, you there?
Yeah, great to be with you. Thank you for the introduction.
You are quite welcome, and I am glad that you are here. Now, this being the first time that you're here, I have to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everybody else that when they get here the first time. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So I tend to look at entrepreneurs a lot like superheroes, because I believe entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them, there was a time, if you can think about it, let's take, Spider-Man, for example. There was a time in Spider-Man's life where he was just going to school, just trying to get good grades, doing his own thing, maybe earning some pizza money. And then something happened to him. And suddenly he discovers that, oh my goodness, I've got some special powers and I get to use it for good or for evil. And I think entrepreneurs are kind of like that. Occasionally we can imagine ourselves flying around in capes and tights and saving our customers and providing great value and service. But ultimately, we all have an origin. We begin somewhere, and we begin differently than the way we are today. So my question to you is as follows. What we want to know is, before your book, Counter Mentor Leadership, before your company, Biz Locker Room, before helping all of the companies they've helped, before learning to sell, before all of that stuff, what we want to know is, who is Kelly Riggs?
Well, first, let me answer. Before I answer the question, let me just say this: if I have to fly around in tights on your show, then it's going to be a short show. Okay? No,
It's a good thing it's audio. It's audio. We're good.
Thank goodness. It's a fantastic question. I think I was a guy who had absolutely no clue what the world looked like and what even my own capabilities may be. I was just a young skull full of mush, I guess. When I went to school to be an engineer, in about the third year of engineering, specifically in a class called differential equations, I figured out this is not for me. So, I loved math, and my dad thought I'd make a great engineer, and he swung and missed on that deal completely. So I actually wound up getting a sales job, Jay, and I was too ignorant of what it was to be scared of it. I didn't even know what sales was. My wife was working at the company, and she said, "Hey, they're looking for a salesperson." And I told them about you, and I had decided to leave college and marry this young lady who was my high school sweetheart. And so I said, "Well, yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to do that." I'd been doing other things, and why they hired me, have no idea. I guess it was because ex-athlete, maybe relatively smart guy, a lot of enthusiasm. They put me in that role, and I really just took to it. I mean, I liked it. I liked the fact that I could control my outcomes. That if I wanted a raise, I could go get it. But I was just basically, I guess, a relatively ignorant individual in terms of knowledge of the world and business and all of those things, and just kind of a blank slate and ready to learn. And I guess what I had going for me, Jay, is I would outwork anybody. I may have not have been the smartest guy in the room, most cases probably not, but definitely ready to learn and grow and work, which is interesting because now in the work that I do, that's the kind of people we look for when we're working with companies. Is if you can find me someone who wants to learn and grow and has a passion for that and has a work ethic to go with it, if they have drive and discipline, or as Angela Duckworth would say, passion and perseverance, well, you can do a lot of things with those kind of individuals, and I think that's who I was.
Got it. I totally get it. Now, you said ex-athlete. What was the sport?
Football. I played high school, played college, and when I played D1 at the University of Tulsa and was there about 3 hours and figured out I had no business playing D1. So when I tell people I play football, let me clarify. I was on the team. I did get a letter. I did play, but I realized that I probably would have been better served to be in like a D2 school or something like that.
Totally. Was it just too intense, too big, too like what was it?
No, I mean, in the final analysis, I didn't have the physical skills to go with it. I mean, I had decent speed, but not D1 speed. I had great hands, was probably what got me there. But I just didn't have the stature. I was 5'9", 175, and could run great routes and get open. I'd be a possession guy, but I mean, I'll never forget. We played Florida State, and the guy covering me was a guy by the name of Bobby Butler. He went on to play for the Atlanta Falcons for a number of years, and he was a true 4'4" guy, 4'3" guy rather. And I couldn't get within 10 yards of him. So I figured out this is not the place for me.
This isn't working. This isn't working. That's so funny. That's no okay. Now you said something that I find interesting, because there were two things that I like about what you said. You said something about that you could outwork anyone, and I've often said that about myself. Like, I may not know what you know, but I will work longer. I will work harder, and it can make that happen. But you also mentioned wants to learn. One of my all-time favorite questions to ask when I'm interviewing for a position, like this is literally a cut question for me, is when I'm interviewing or asking people, to join the team, I always ask them, tell me about the last 5 books that you read, title, and something you learned from them. Because I'm looking for that's the question that I've come up with that helps me to try and find that type of thing out. So I'm curious to know, in your time working with entrepreneurs and helping to build teams, how do you find that? Because that's definitely something that we all should be looking for.
Well, I pursue a very similar line of questioning. I think, frankly, it's brilliant because people who are passionate about what they do. Now, in this day and age, there's a little bit of a discrimination in terms of how they learn. So books many times may not be that, but you'll find people are plugged into podcasts and they're plugged into TED Talks and maybe audio books. But I think it's a great question. There's such a correlation between reading and learning and success in business and in life. I think it's a big deal. The challenge is so many kids today, in my experience, really kind of shy away from at least written books. They may read them on, Kindle, and as do I now. But I typically read anywhere from 100 to 150 books a year minimum. And I just think that's how someone has to stay current, stay on top of their game, continue to evolve their skills. And I think that's a great question. When I interview salespeople, tell me about the last sales book you read, and you'd be shocked at how many times they're like, well, I looked at your book. I'm like, well, great, but you just got it maybe a few days ago, so it's not like you've been immersed in it or anything like that. I think it is a good cut line. I really do. I think it's a great question.
Got it. Now, I just want to make sure for everyone else who either was driving or possibly jogging or holding a fragile dish while they're listening to us, did you say 150 books a year?
Yeah, somewhere between 100 and 150 books a year. At any given time, I've got 3 or 4 on Kindle and probably a couple of hardcovers. And when I say I read them, I mean I don't always read them completely because they don't all engage me at the same level.
Oh, preach!
But the ones that do, yeah, I typically read them twice. I'm underlining and highlighting and trying to figure out how I bring those into my work. It is not unusual at all for me to quote other authors and speakers and leaders to validate things that we talk about. I mean, to me, research is critical. To validating the kinds of things that you do. It's very difficult to convert somebody to a one-off kind of talent. The old adage in sales is the top 20% of your salespeople are producing 80% of your sales. They're your stars, but the top 20% of the top 20%, your top 4%, it's really hard to replicate what they do. Many times what they're doing, you can't teach. So.
Indeed. Now, you said something else that I find interesting, and this one's for me because I have this challenge. When I start a book, I have this I have this concern that if I don't finish, because when you mentioned the ones that don't engage you, I was like, yeah. Right. I'm always concerned that I'm going to miss the one thing. Like, if I don't finish this thing, I'm going to miss the one thing that was actually in here for me. And you seem to not have that issue.
Well, I guess I really don't. What I will do is I'll get started in the first 3. I typically give any book 3 chapters, and then if it's kind of getting there, I'll give it 3 more. And if it doesn't have me by then, typically what I'm going to do is go back to the table of contents, skim the chapter titles, see if there's anything that jumps out that could be for me, exactly as you note, and then I'll go read that. And if it doesn't grab me either, then typically I'm done. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but I have a pretty diverse reading list, so it's not unusual.
Got it.
For that to happen.
It's funny that you said that, because as soon as you said, my wife and I, we have this, we call it the 20-minute rule. So we'll give any movie 20 minutes. Right. And after that, you haven't done it in 20 minutes, we're done. We don't care. We're leaving. We're turning it off. We're finding something else to do because, I think I now have a 3-chapter rule. So thank you for that. Yes. So now my book count can go up too. This is good. I'm like, yay. I have given everybody, you have permission. 3-chapter rule. That's the new thing. So let's talk about this though. How do you go from sales to biz locker room? I mean, you start out this person who on your journey, if you will, you don't know anything about, you're like, what sales? I don't know. I'll do it. Okay, great. But now you help, organizations, CEOs, etc., go out there and make sure that their teams are doing what they need to do and becoming the leader that all of us are striving to be. Help me understand that journey, that path.
It's such a great question. And I think it's so insightful for your listeners, because this is where a lot of challenges arise in entrepreneurial circles and when people are trying to scale their businesses. Because typically our approach in business is to look at our top salesperson as the prime candidate when we need to promote someone to leadership. I mean, after all, if they're great at getting sales, then they're going to be great at teaching other people how to do the same.
Hold on. Did you say take the top sales guy and promote him into leadership?
Yeah,
Well,
brilliant, right?
well, then what happens to my sales?
Well, that's exactly the point. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. I was Exhibit A for that, and this is the
I
answer to
see.
your question on my journey. I was a National Salesperson of the Year two years in a row for a company based in Northern California. Then they came to me and said, "Hey, we need a regional manager in the Midwest, and we'd like to offer you that job." Of course, whether it was ego or career advancement or whatever, I'm like, sure, I'll absolutely. And I got into that position and realized extraordinarily quickly I had no idea what I was doing. The thought is I can sell so I can help other people learn, but it's just not the case. I didn't know how to interview and hire. I didn't know how to lead people. I didn't know how to get them rowing in the same direction. I didn't know anything about that. And I looked at it exactly the way I looked at sales. I actually like doing this, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So it became a mission for me to learn everything. And I read everything I could find. I went to conferences and leadership seminars. I mean, I did everything I could to become capable and then great at that role, and wound up being very, very successful as a manager. But I will tell you this, I think there's a cut line there too, is any manager who wants to, become a great leader, who does not have the ability to grow and develop people, which requires a coaching and teaching skill set. If you can't develop that, you're never going to be the leader that you're capable of being. And I think I was fortunate in that I actually thrive and love to coach and teach others.
Okay, so now you just said something that I think either scared a number of entrepreneurs listening or excited them. I'm not really sure, because you said, basically, I'm going to take what you said, and it sounds like you're saying, if I want to have a business of any size that's bigger than just me, I have to have the ability to coach and teach people. But I've never done either one of those things. And oftentimes the ideas that we have in our head are definitely larger than just us. I mean, I've already have enough trouble just selling my stuff. Why now you want me to go learn to coach and teach people too?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, there is an alternative. An alternative is to have the self-awareness to recognize that you have neither the skill or the temperament to do those kinds of things. Typically, temperament. I run across a lot of executives who are like, I just don't like doing that. Well, it's kind of a prerequisite. If you can't grow people, how do you grow your organization? And so what they do is they say, well, I've got a crackerjack guy who does that. I've got another guy in the executive team, leadership team. That's his thing. What I focus on is, CapEx and the numbers and finances and asset acquisition. But I've got a people guy who is just stellar, and he does that. So I think the alternative is you can always bring somebody into the organization that is their skills, and you can create a powerhouse duo of leaders at the top, one who focuses on one side of the business and one on the other. But you cannot leave that area vacant, because if you can't engage and develop employees, then you're going to fail. I mean, you're just not going to be able to scale. You're going to be very frustrated as a business owner.
So let's talk about it. At what point does it become obvious that, hey, I need to start doing this? Like, how do you know? Is it literally from the day you get your first person, or is there some sort of like, hey, I can get by until, until we got 10 people? Like, what is that? What does that look like for most organizations?
Well, I think most startups, when they begin to add people, really what they are is a sort of a self-limiting team of one with some assistants. They are the team, and they wear a lot of hats, and that's by necessity. I mean, it could be a cash flow issue, could be a lot of things, but every entrepreneur, when they start out, they're doing a lot of roles and doing a lot of things, and they finally get to the point and they say, okay, this is not tenable for me. I can't persist in this because I'm going to get ulcers or I'm going to drop dead, one or the other. So they hire, or both. So they hire someone to do a role or do a task, and that's okay. You can legitimately probably engage 3 to 5 people fairly easily. But again, you have to be able to engage them. If they're just nothing more than tools or pawns, then you're going to have a lot of turnover. They're not going to be engaged in their work, so that you're going to be missing out on a lot of the potential they can bring to your organization. But there comes a point in time when you hit a certain level where you need to add that first other person who's going to play a leadership role. And that's a critical hire for you. I would suggest to you that you have to pay attention to people and have that, that emotional intelligence about, people, even when you're hiring that first one. But when you hire that first leader, that's going to have to be a really good hire, because you are going to have a relationship with them that provides the trust that will let them, make some decisions and do some things independently of you. Otherwise, you're still the bottleneck in the organization. And by the way, I've been there. I was that guy. I learned that the hard way in the first business that I owned.
Well, and you're bringing up what I think is a very salient point and sensitive subject at the same time. It's like I'm stuck between this rock and proverbial hard place, because you're asking me to entrust my baby, for lack of a better way of putting it, my source of income, how I provide. You're asking me to let some perfectly not kind of stranger, if you will, into the organization to, kind of make these decisions. And yet at the same time, I know that I can't grow unless I do so. And what compounds that is, well, Kelly, I'm not good at hiring people. How do you get good at hiring people? All of those questions at once. I know that's what people are thinking. So how do we get through that? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
Well, I mean, you put your finger in the middle of it. When you talk about the most important things we do as entrepreneurs or business owners, hiring people is absolutely the top of the list. And it is amazing how often, how consistently we ask people to do those things, interview and hire, and they've never, ever been trained. They have no idea what they're doing. So they do what I did. When I got promoted to sales manager, I tried to hire people like me. I looked, for ex-athletes and, that kind of thing. And that was a disaster. It was the proverbial dumpster fire, So I learned very quickly that wasn't going to work. And I got enmeshed in this whole idea of, is there a system or a methodology for hiring that works? And the answer is yes, there is. And that's something that you have to learn. There's a couple of great books out there. One is huge. It's called Top Grading by Dr. Bradford Smart. The smaller version, and the one that I recommend to everybody, is called Who, the A Method for Hiring, and it's written actually by his son and another gentleman. I forget Smart's first name. It escapes me right now, but it's a fantastic book. But I think that's the first step. Rather than run out and say, I need to hire somebody and do it reactively, and pick up the first guy who looks like he's got a great resume. Jay, you probably know this, but maybe your listeners don't. And this may shock them, but do you know sometimes people misrepresent themselves on their resumes?
Nuh-uh.
No, I'm serious. It happens.
No.
Yeah. So, reading through and getting through that, there are very systematic methodologies for finding good people. And really, because it's going to be a long-term relationship, I mean, you need it to be a good hire, and you need to develop that relationship with that person. As we like to say, because we do a lot of work now with millennials and the generation that's coming into the workplace and how it's impacting boomers and that whole conflict, is that leadership is not generational. Leadership is relational. And defining and building those relationships effectively is absolutely critical for good leadership.
Now, if I remember correctly, you said it was who, the A method of hiring, and I have that as Jeff Smart.
Jeffrey Smart, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And now you just stepped your toe into what some would consider to be the proverbial landmine, like, because I've heard it said, although I don't find it necessarily to be true, but I've heard it said that, oh my God, these millennials, they don't like working. How do you lead them? They just want to go off and do their own thing all day. So can you shed some light on this myth / how else are we going to grow our business if we don't learn to lead them?
Yeah. You know, my son and I, my son's a 31-year-old millennial, and, we have this relationship that we coined this term counter mentoring. And it is that, my son interned with me in college, and then he got into big consulting and did very, very well very quickly. And now actually owns his own consulting shop with a partner, and they've been going at it about 3 years, doing very, very well. And it began after several years out into the workplace. Our conversations began to turn a little bit where I was not only giving him advice, but I was asking his advice. And how are you dealing with these things? And that sort of counter mentoring idea led me to refine my philosophies about leadership and ultimately import some of his and put them together. And together we wrote this book, Counter Mentor Leadership. And the whole idea is that first off, the premise is wrong. We say, these millennials, these cupcakes, these snowflakes, they don't want to work. They're entitled. They're this, that, and the other thing. And my son, we have a podcast as well, and he loves to say, all these things you guys talk about, do you forget who raised us? And so if there's anything wrong with us, maybe you should be looking at yourself as
nice.
Yeah, so he's kind of quick like that. So I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. We as parents, the whole idea of helicopter parent became a part of our dialogue some years ago because parents wouldn't let their kids fail. It was never little Johnny's fault. No, my little Susie would never do that. And, parents would go to school and step in front of their parents and not let them suffer consequences to their actions. And, and as we did, as we became more affluent at our work, we wanted to give our kids more opportunities. And we didn't want them to have to struggle like we did. And, we've heard all those terms and phrases used. Unfortunately, there's some unintended consequences there. When failure is such a great teacher and it's such a builder of character, and it sounds trite, but it's absolutely the case. And so we recognize first off that you have to understand that we're dealing with something we created ourselves, and now we don't want them to be the way they turned out. That makes absolutely no sense. The second part of it is these kids these days, Jay, they come into the workplace and they've got enormous skills. They just look a lot different than what we're used to. They've built their lives around life hacking and growth hacking and sales hacking. They know community, they know social, they know technology. They can find an app for anything. As my son likes to say, these boomers, I can do more at Starbucks before 10 o'clock on my iPhone than they can do all day sitting behind a desk, But we don't like that. We equate hard work ethic with seeing you in that seat from 8 to 5. So we really get frustrated with it. So one of the things that we do in our methodology, we use the word counter, by the way, as also 7 steps in our methodology. You in counter is you need to understand their perspectives, because although they are different, in many ways they're very powerful. And you have to understand what they can do and grow from that and leverage what they do, rather than saying, look, if you're not going to do it my way, then you can't work here. One of the great examples that I like to use is Mike Krzyzewski, the hyper successful coach at the University of Duke basketball. He's been there 30 years. He's easily, I would suggest, one of the 2 top coaches in the history of college basketball. And so you take that and you say, no, wait a minute, he's been doing this for 30 years. He's still successful today. Over 30 years, the game has changed dramatically. The rules have changed dramatically. Schemes have changed dramatically. And oh yes, he's also dealing with different kinds of players. One and done is now a big deal in the college ranks, and kids are different. And yet, he is still successful. Do you really think he did that by saying, look, you're going to do it my way or the highway? There's no other way to do it. Or did he look at the change in the game and the schemes and the people and adapt his principles of success to what the existing reality is? And I would suggest to you that's exactly what he did. And that's what we have to do today.
Interesting. I like that. Adapting the principles, because adaptation or learning to be flexible or malleable and changing. I think it's a it's a mandatory skill set as an entrepreneur because the landscape is constantly changing and it's changing faster, simply because of all the technology you were just mentioning. But there's something that you said that I really want to zero in on, especially as we're talking about building organizations, hiring people, and making sure that our dream becomes bigger than ourselves. You mentioned letting as a parent, letting your kids fail. And I know for me, failure has been by far the best teacher. But when I'm hiring someone, how much rope do I give them to let them fail? I mean, because there's a part of that that's kind of necessary, I think, as well. Because you can end up being, for lack of a better analogy, being that helicopter CEO or leader.
No question about it. Well, warning for your audience, hashtag shameless plug coming right here.
I may have queued it up that way, but yes, go for it.
Well, I mean, this is exactly why we want you to read the book, Counter Mentor Leadership. It is not, as my son likes to say, another boring leadership book. I mean, there's so much written on leadership. And my son is, he's tweeted about a few of those books. I've read a lot of them, actually. And there's a lot of good material there, but there's enough leadership to go around. This book is about the practical side of leading in a very different kind of workplace. The workplace has changed dramatically in the last 15 or 20 years, and that means it's changed dramatically for entrepreneurs and startups as well. And so the challenge you have is, as you've laid it out, is the one that we've always dealt with is I want to hire a second leader or someone to take charge of things, but how much rope can I give them? And so what happens is we give them a little rope and they fail and we go, see, I knew it. I knew that wasn't going to work. Nobody knows how to do this better than I do. So I'm going to put my thumb on this deal. And therein begins this cycle and this circle that happens because people, who are good at what they do, who want to grow, learn, develop, they get discouraged because suddenly, because they've made a mistake, they're considered to be incapable or, not capable of making decisions above, where they go eat lunch today. And that means ultimately you're going to lose your good people. But assuming you've got really good people, there is a defined methodology for creating that rope at the appropriate length. And we call it, Jay, the freedom box. And what I want to do is create boundaries for people that says, hey, here's the kind of people we are. Here's our values and what drives us. Here's the expectations very explicitly that I have for you in your role. Here's your performance metrics. And oh, by the way, here's your level of authority. And inside of that box, I provide all the resources and training you need to do your job very, very well. That box starts off kind of small. As you grow in experience and wisdom, it gets bigger and bigger. And frankly, I want that thing to be as big as possible because I want you to be able to work without me. What happens is inside of that box, people will still fail. But when they fail, Jay, they're going to fail small. Failing small is good because it's a great teaching, learning opportunity. Doesn't cost much. What I don't want to happen is for them to fail big and sink our battleship. That's not good.
Right.
So what happens is people will bring somebody and say, okay, I've heard I need to delegate, and I've heard I need to trust, and I've heard I need to empower. So, okay, go do your job. And the next thing you know, they've done something that sinks the ship. And then they go, wow, I'm never, ever doing that again. And it's just because they didn't follow a good process to get them to the right place.
So this is where you say, in my book, Counter Mentor Leadership, we can teach you how to make that box.
Absolutely right. And you can find that book, by the way, at bizlockerroom.com. Yes, indeed.
Perfect. Because I mean, that's the crux of everything is that we know this, but it's scary. I mean, I joke, but it's like being a parent for the first time. You remember that first kid? You treated them like a porcelain doll, but by kid number 3, you're like, whatever, they'll eat eventually,
They're not going to die.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to get to that stage is, there's so many emotions, and any guidance that you guys can provide in that way is 100% helpful in all of those things. In fact, what is some other ways that we can track you down and find out what you guys got going on? Because I know what's happened is that if they're anything like me, they're listening, go, man, Yes, I need that. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I want to grow, because I think as an entrepreneur, we're always in a constant state of growth. And, I've told myself this year, this is the year that we finally get, above, the $2.5 million mark. That's what I said.
Yes.
This is the year that it's going to happen. And I've been doing lots of new things this year that I've never done, and pushing myself in ways that I've never pushed, and learning. And that's cool. But yet at the same time, you can still be met with that resistance. You can still be met with trying to understand how to grow, which suggests to me, since you've been doing this for a long time, that there's other ways for us to connect with you. We would love to tap into your brilliance some more. Other than the book, how else can we find you?
Well, obviously, I'd love for you to go to bizlockerroom.com. I write a blog there, and all the corporate things that we talk about. I think probably the thing, Jay, that makes me unique in a lot of ways is not only have I been a very successful sales guy, a successful leader as well, but I've been very successful at teaching and coaching others how to do that. But my perspective is different because I've been a business owner. So as a business owner, I not only teach people these concepts, but I can say I've been there and done that. And I want to train your salespeople to think like business people. And you can find a lot of that philosophy and my background there at bizlockerroom.com. My son and I, we mentioned it, we had written the book together. You can find that at countermentors.com. It's plural, countermentors.com. And find out a lot more about what we do there as well. Love to connect with your folks on social media. You can find me at Kelly Riggs on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just track me down. I'm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you can find that fairly easily. Or you can find those connections on the website as well. But love to connect with your group socially.
Absolutely, and we're going to do our best to make that happen. Now, as we wind down, I have a final question for you, and I would love to hear your answer, because here's what I know. I know there's someone who's been listening, and they said, you know what, Kelly? All right, Jay, I believe you guys. They're going to go, I like to say they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store. They are ready to put their entrepreneur outfit on and go out there, take over the world. However, Kelly, like I know, that when we come to those moments of decisions, there's a companion that is often with us, and it comes in the form of a voice, and a voice that reminds us and says things like, who are you to actually go out there? Do you honestly think you can lead people? What? You want to make how much money? And for some people, they're actually related to that voice.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is this. Let's pretend that today, right now, they're going to go ahead and they're going to move forward, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you tell them to do?
The first thing I would tell them to do is to find an accountability partner. First thing I would do, say, you need to go find someone that will hold you accountable to the path that you've decided to go down, because it's way easy. In fact, it's far too easy to encounter resistance and then to give up and to give into those voices. One of the best examples that I have from personal experience was before I was the National Salesperson of the Year, the company that I was at, my wife found out that they had a thing called the President's Club. And they found out that if you achieve the top level of the President's Club, that you would get 2 weeks in Hawaii, all expenses paid, plus spending money. And I'm going to tell you, Jay, there is no sales manager quite as good as a motivated wife. All right. And so, I'd be sitting in the house, 8:30 in the morning. She's like, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm getting ready to go out. We're not going to Hawaii if you're sitting here. You need to be out making calls. It's kind of a funny example, but over the course of my career, I have learned that I do better work, faster work, more effective work, more impactful work when I feel an accountability, a responsibility to someone else who's paying attention and who will encourage me. I mean, you're looking for the person who gets it, understands your vision, knows where you want to go, and is willing to call baloney on your nonsense when they need to, and to be real with you. And I think that at the same time, man, they can encourage you, they can celebrate with you, they can enjoy that side of success. I think that's really, really critical. We are always advocating that coaching is absolutely essential to entrepreneurial success. I employ coaches over the years to help me in a variety of ways. And I think that, in fact, when I wrote my first book and I got to a sticking point, I went and found a coach and I got it done. I mean, somebody could help me with some of the critical aspects of it. And yet at the same time, I knew that Monday morning we were having a conversation. And if I hadn't done some writing, I was going to have to face the music. It's a little different motivation.
Yes, indeed. I love it. 100%. Let me be the first to say, thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge, your insight, and your wisdom, because there's a lot there and there's a lot more there, and I can hear it. And hopefully, everyone else has heard it too, but definitely appreciate you taking the time to share your information here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It means like I know, that you want to make your freedom box. You know that, hey, you now have a 3-chapter rule when it comes to books so you can get through more of them. That also means you should probably be headed to bizlockerroom.com because you need to hear the rest of this story. So get over there, make it happen. But most importantly, find that accountability partner too, because at the end of the day, there's nothing like a motivated spouse who wants to go to Hawaii. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.